Hello everyone, welcome to the Mysterious Stories channel, where you'll discover the most mysterious, scary, and fascinating stories. Make sure to turn up the volume and get ready for a spine-chilling experience you won't forget. As Sarah and John embarked on their much-anticipated vacation, an eerie feeling lingered in the air. The reason they chose to spend their holiday in this particular cabin was because it was John's inheritance, passed down through generations. Nestled deep in the woods, the cabin had an old-world charm that promised both solitude and tranquility. Their journey to the cabin was filled with excitement. After weeks of working in different cities, this was their chance to reconnect and unwind. The cabin was isolated, surrounded by dense forest and the faint sound of a nearby stream. They arrived in the late afternoon, just as the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the landscape. "Here we are," John said, parking the car in front of the rustic wooden cabin. "It's even more beautiful than I remember." Sarah smiled, taking in the peaceful surroundings. "It's perfect, just what we need." They spent the first evening settling in. The cabin was well equipped, with a cozy living room, a fully stocked kitchen, and a bedroom that overlooked the forest. Sarah lit a fire in the stone fireplace while John unpacked their bags. The warmth of the fire quickly filled the room, creating a comforting atmosphere. For dinner, they prepared a simple but delicious meal, savoring every bite as they reminisced about old memories and shared their plans for the future. After dinner, they relaxed on the couch, enjoying a glass of wine and the soothing crackle of the fire. "This place is so relaxing," Sarah said, leaning against John. "I can feel all the stress just melting away." John wrapped his arm around her, feeling the same sense of calm. "I'm glad we came here. It's exactly what we needed." As the night progressed, they decided to call it a day. The first night passed uneventfully, filled with restful sleep and dreams of a peaceful retreat. The cabin, with its creaky floors and rustic charm, felt like a sanctuary. Little did they know, the serenity of their first night was merely the calm before the storm. The shadows that danced on the cabin walls hinted at secrets yet to be revealed, and the forest outside seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Tomorrow would bring more than just relaxation and comfort. It would bring the beginning of a journey neither of them could have ever anticipated. Sarah and John woke up early, the first rays of sunlight filtering through the curtains of their bedroom. The cabin, bathed in the soft glow of the morning light, felt even more enchanting. They decided to make the most of their day, eager to explore the surroundings and enjoy some outdoor activities. After a hearty breakfast, they packed a picnic basket and set off on a hike through the forest. The trail wound through tall trees, their leaves rustling gently in the breeze. Birds chirped overhead, and the air was filled with the fresh scent of pine. They spent hours walking, talking, and soaking in the natural beauty. At midday, they reached a clearing with a small, picturesque lake. They set up their picnic and enjoyed a leisurely meal by the water's edge, basking in the sun and the peacefulness of their surroundings. "This place is incredible," Sarah said, dipping her toes into the cool water. "I can't believe how relaxing it is." John nodded, lying back on the grass. "It's exactly what we needed, just us and nature." After lunch, they decided to try their hand at fishing. John had found some old fishing rods in the cabin shed, and they spent a few hours casting their lines into the lake, laughing and chatting as they waited for a bite. They managed to catch a few small fish, which they decided to cook for dinner later. As the afternoon wore on, they headed back to the cabin, their bodies pleasantly tired from the day's activities. They spent some time lounging on the porch, reading books and enjoying the last of the daylight. As night fell, the atmosphere began to change. The previously inviting forest now seemed darker, the shadows deeper. Sarah and John prepared a simple dinner with the fish they had caught, and as they ate, an unspoken sense of unease settled over them. After dinner, they retreated to the living room, lighting the fire once again. They tried to shake off the feeling of discomfort, attributing it to their tiredness from the day's adventures. They played a board game and shared stories, but the unease lingered. As they got ready for bed, the cabin seemed different. The creaks and groans of the old wood were louder, more pronounced. The wind outside seemed to howl more intensely, rattling the windows. John tried to reassure Sarah. "It's just an old cabin. These noises are normal." But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "I don't know, John. It feels different tonight." They went to bed, but sleep did not come easily. Sarah tossed and turned, her mind racing. She thought she heard faint whispers outside the window, but when she looked, there was nothing there. The unease grew, settling into a knot in her stomach. Around midnight, a loud bang echoed through the cabin, startling them both awake. John got up to investigate, checking the doors and windows. Everything was secure, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. "Maybe it was just an animal," John suggested, trying to calm Sarah, but Sarah's instincts told her otherwise. "It didn't sound like an animal, John. It sounded human." The rest of the night was restless, filled with strange noises and an ever-growing sense of dread. They stayed close together, feeling the walls of their sanctuary closing in. As the first light of dawn began to break, they both felt an odd sense of relief. But the events of the second night had left a mark. Something was out there, something that did not want them there. Their peaceful vacation was beginning to turn into a chilling ordeal, and they could not shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The next morning, Sarah and John awoke feeling drained and unsettled. The events of the previous night weighed heavily on their minds, but they were determined to make the most of their final day at the cabin. They decided to go for another hike, hoping the fresh air and exercise would help clear their minds. The forest seemed quieter than before, the birds' songs more subdued. They walked in silence for a while, each lost in their thoughts. "Do you feel like we're being watched?" Sarah finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. John nodded, his eyes scanning the trees. "Yeah, I do. But we can't let it ruin our trip." They continued their hike, trying to focus on the beauty around them. The path led them to a small waterfall, where they took a break and tried to relax. The sound of the water was soothing, but the feeling of being watched persisted. Returning to the cabin, they spent the afternoon reading and enjoying each other's company. John suggested they have a barbecue for dinner, hoping the familiar activity would lift their spirits. As the sun began to set, they prepared the grill and started cooking. The smell of grilled meat filled the air, and for a moment, they managed to forget their unease. They ate on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. But as darkness fell, the tension returned. After dinner, they decided to light a fire in the living room and play another board game. They tried to ignore the growing sense of dread, but it was impossible to shake. Every creak of the cabin seemed louder, every shadow more menacing. Around midnight, the strange noises began again. This time, they were louder and more distinct. There were whispers, footsteps, and the sound of something scratching at the windows. Sarah clutched John's arm. "Did you hear that?" John nodded, his face pale. "We need to stay calm." The banging sound from the previous night returned, even louder and more insistent. John grabbed a flashlight and decided to investigate, despite Sarah's protests. He checked the doors and windows, but everything was secure. The noises seemed to be coming from all around them, inside and outside the cabin. Suddenly, the power went out, plunging them into darkness. Sarah screamed, and John quickly returned to her side, holding her close. "We need to get out of here," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. John nodded. "Let's grab our things and go." They hurriedly packed their bags, using the flashlight to navigate the dark cabin. The noises grew louder, more frantic, as they stepped outside. The forest seemed to close in around them. They made their way to the car, the flashlight flickering ominously. As they drove away from the cabin, the feeling of being watched intensified. The road was dark and winding, and every shadow seemed to hold a threat. "Just keep driving," Sarah urged, her eyes wide with fear. John nodded, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. We'll be home soon." As they drove, the noises began to fade, replaced by the comforting hum of the engine. They didn't speak, each lost in their thoughts. It wasn't until they were miles away from the cabin that they finally felt safe. When they reached home, they collapsed into bed, exhausted but relieved to be away from the cabin. They never spoke of the events in detail, but the experience left a lasting impression on both of them. The cabin, once a symbol of relaxation and escape, had become a place of terror. They never returned, and the memory of that fateful trip remained a chilling reminder of the unknown horrors that can lurk just out of sight. If you enjoyed today's story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, Mystical Tales, so you won't miss out on more eerie and thrilling tales in the future. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.